lot of nuts!
My first foray into using the internet and discovering the internet and memes and what have you was actually in elementary school, like first or second grade, maybe even, I think first or second grade. And basically we had a class project where they took our entire class out into the recess area outside, and we had to go and find caterpillars crawling on the trees, and obviously we found them instantly. We captured a couple of them and we put them into a jar with some twigs and some leaves, and we did this at the beginning of the year, and the idea was over the course of however long, a couple weeks, a couple months, we would keep this jar in the classroom, and all the kids in the class would be able to watch and study this caterpillar turn into a cocoon or a chrysalis, and then evolve into a butterfree or a bee drill or whatever. And every day we would sit in front of these jars and we had a sketchbook, and we were supposed to sketch what we saw in the jar so that over the course of a couple months we could see this thing become a moth or a butterfly. One of the caterpillars, we came to the class one day and there was only one jar, and evidently the caterpillar either died or disappeared. I'm guessing they didn't want to tell us. So they were like, we're just going to focus on this one jar. So that's the one that everybody became enamored with. And this was sort of like the class pet for all of us. Like, you'd spend 20 minutes every day sitting in front of this thing, getting your sketch done at whatever free time that you had. Once a week, I believe on Wednesdays, we had 2 PCs. And during free time, you could opt to use the PCs to play the one computer game that everybody knew, which was Gizmos and Gadgets, this very simple 2D platformer where you would collect pieces to make a little downhill race car, and then if you collected enough pieces, you won the race, and that was the game. I'm sure some of you also have fond memories of playing this when you were like 10. I loved this game, not only because the idea of playing a game on a computer was the coolest thing ever because we weren't technically allowed to use the internet, but also because it was so cool that everybody would crowd around you and watch you play this game. So naturally, being the little attention seeker that I am, I really wanted to not only play the game, but also be the center of attention in class. So when Wednesday came up and it was my turn to spend 20 minutes on the computer, which only happened like twice a month or something because we only had 2 computers, the second that we ended silent reading time, group reading time, I got up. It was free time, my turn on the computer. I sprint towards the PCs in the back of the classroom, and I'm met with the sound of exploding glass all over the floor. I had inadvertently hit the jar that had our class pet in it and completely demolished this thing on the ground, and it was dead silent for what felt like forever. Obviously, we had been spending pretty much every day studying metamorphosis, and this was sort of like the cornerstone of our entire little project. So the teacher was naturally pretty upset that I, somebody who already made a bunch of trouble and bothered a bunch of kids because I was that kind of kid as a child, banned me from using the computer for my free period, which meant I wouldn't be able to play Gizmos and Gadgets till the next month. Naturally, I was bummed out. I don't remember if it was just because of what I felt about what had happened, or if kids were kind of like, oh, Sumet messed up the class project. The teacher ended up taking one of the caterpillars that had already turned into a cocoon or a chrysalis from an adjacent classroom, because they had 2 caterpillars that were metamorphosizing, and brought it to our class. So that was remedied at least. But I wasn't allowed to use the computer, and that sucked. Thankfully for me, though, the following week or something, I had accidentally shown up to school an hour early, thinking that we had gone an hour back, but in fact we had gone, or thinking we had gone an hour forward, but had actually gone an hour back. So I showed up 2 hours before class was open. I get there, the classroom's empty, the teacher is still there for whatever reason. I guess they show up super early, and she was like, what are you doing here? And I was like, school? And she was like, not for several hours, Sumet, you idiot. And I was like, damn, I guess I could go back home, or I mean, I'll just hang out here. I don't want to go home and tell my mom, who I told the night before I had to go to school an hour early, that I was in fact 2 hours early to school not even being there. And I was like, hey, nobody's here. I got to kill several hours. I'm sure you don't want to have to watch over me. Can I just use the computer? And she was like, yeah, whatever. Go use the computer. I don't want to watch you. That sounds fine. The day before, we spend after school every day talking about what websites and high scores we got in Gizmos and Gadgets. One of my friends had shared a website with me which is the only way you discovered websites as a kid back then, by the way. I don't know what Google was at that point. And he was like, bro, you got to check out limecat.com or .org or whatever it was. And I was like, that sounds crazy. And so I pull it up, and it's a picture of a cat in a little hat made out of a lime. It's probably pretty infamous at this point. This was back in the I Can Has Cheeseburger era, but it was just hosted on like limecat.org or something. I can't find it now, but here's the image. And I showed my teacher. I was like, hey, check out this thing that I found on the internet. And she was like, you're not supposed to be using the internet. And I was like, I know, but take a look at it. She loved it. She was like, wow, whose cat is that? And I was like, I don't know. It's just a cat picture on the internet. Don't you love its hat? And she was like, I do love its hat. This is a cool cat. Afterwards, once everybody got there and I just stayed quiet for a couple hours, she was like, Sumet, you know, it was an accident. Not a big deal. We managed to get another caterpillar. You know, I hope the kids aren't giving you a hard time about ruining the class project or whatever. And then sort of made an announcement that's like, because it was everybody knew that I had been banned from playing on the computer because of that. So she was like, hey guys, we're over it. We're going to go back to normal free time. Smet can use the PC if he wants. You know, we got a new jar. Let it go. Stupid little origin story. I feel cheesy sharing it because it feels like I'm making it up, because it's like, oh, Smet used a meme to get his computer privileges back when he was like 8, and now he wants to share memes on the internet. Oh, what a cheesy fucking doofus. But that's the reality of the first time I used the internet, basically. Once we got to middle school, my cousin in Wisconsin had sent me a Dell Inspiron something desktop, some terrible little Intel Core 2 Duo processor thing with 2 gigs of RAM and a 45 gigabyte hard drive. But it had an internet connection. We managed to set up an internet connection at my place, so I did have a PC at home, albeit it sucked. But it was good enough to play Flash games on addictinggames.com and cartoonnetwork.com and all the rest. Your boy was finally online. I'd experienced just a few little bits of viral videos online at this point. This was pre-YouTube era, so we were still sharing videos on like Newgrounds as a thing back then and miniclips.com. I remember the first really viral animation that I saw was either like the history of the internet or the song animation Godzilla Destroys the City, and then the porn animation of Godzilla fucks the city. And I just remember discovering these things and then sharing them with people and feeling like the coolest dude in the world when like they hadn't seen these old school Newgrounds animations before, and I was the one to share it with them, and then they would discover new ones and share it with me. This is like this is all I knew about the internet, was Flash games and sharing goofy little animations back in middle school. I remember that buddy game that had like the little MSN character and you could like shoot him with an AK-47. I remember seeing homestarrunner.com, a sleepover at a friend's house. He had like an entire instrument set in his basement, and we would just play shitty music all night and then wake up early in the morning to see if they had posted a new video on homestarrunner.com. I remember, to this day, I can still beat the Impossible Quiz, the Flash game. Any of the 4-Second Fury, 4-Second Firestorm games, I could beat blindfolded at this point, because I just played them over and over and over again. Because between that and watching stick figure combat animations and playing Stick Arena, like that's all I knew about the internet at that point, was Flash games and Flash animations. The internet was Flash and made for porn. In the early 2000s, my buddy who lived in the same neighborhood as me shared with me a video that he had downloaded onto his iPod video, and it was the Numa Numa guy. And we listened and watched as this big fat dude from some random corner of the internet lip-synced the entirety of the Numa Numa song. And we had the lyrics to this thing memorized. I mean, it was like we listened to it dozens of times a day, because like what else were we gonna do? And it was my first time seeing something, because I had already experienced video games and Flash animations, and that was something that was like, it's so cool to experience this as a viewer, but like I wasn't artistically talented to any means, and I didn't have the desire to try and learn how to make these things. That wasn't even in my peripheral of something that I could do. But seeing this dude just sit in front of a camera and act goofy and bring so much joy to just watch this guy lip sync the entirety of the song, of whom's lyrics I did not understand a single word of, filled me with a tremendous amount of joy and really made me want to try and do something on the internet. I didn't know what yet. I was like 12 or 13 or something at this point, but I knew I wanted to do something. I wanted to contribute to this thing that was the internet that had brought me so much joy even at that young age. And that's when we started browsing Funnyjunk.com, which is still a website you can visit now. But back in the day, this was Reddit before Reddit. This was user-submitted content that people could upvote or downvote, and so you could visit it every single day and see the most viral images and jokes and integrated videos that people had put on the website. And this was the coolest thing in the world to somebody like me who loved the internet more than anything. I actually still have access to my old Funnyjunk.com account, of which I made a few posts when I was, what are the dates on these things? This has got to be like 2010 or 2012. The first one that I ever managed to reach the front page of Funnyjunk with, which was a massive accomplishment for, how old was I at this point? This thing was posted in 2011, 13 years ago, means I was 15. And I posted this screen grab from the introduction of Family Guy with this is the only way you captioned memes back in the day, was this demotivational poster with the text under the image. And it was just Joe from Family Guy in the introduction caption, how the fuck does he get up there every single episode? You can see the 480p buffering tag in the top of the image. This thing, there's an edit at the bottom of this that says, OMFG, front page, I love you gays, and then a bunch of smiling faces. This is just classic pre-YouTube era internet. I also took a tremendous amount of inspiration from Cyanide and Happiness, the webcomic that has now been ongoing for 10-15 years. It was something I checked every single day alongside text messages from last night and fmylife.com websites that were like, I only knew like 5 websites, and these were the ones that I would frequent every day. This is actually a image that I took on my iPod Touch that had a camera on it because I didn't have a phone back then. And it is a webcomic that I tried to start, but I didn't know how to draw using a computer. So I would draw these comics on index cards, take pictures of them, and then put them together in MS Paint as comic panels. And it's just terrible. I didn't know how to draw then. I still don't know how to draw now. The jokes suck. This one's, this is when they first introduced panoramic photos. And I was like, man, how did people ever take photos before panoramic photos were a thing? And then the punchline is, we took a step back. And this got fucking 666 upvotes on funnyjunk.com. I was a fucking weirdo, bro. A huge part of my style of comedy, what really formed what I found funny, was obviously early internet era stuff, because my adolescent age matched up with the development of the internet. And one of the bigger things that I did pre-YouTube, because obviously YouTube is going to dictate everything and anything that you find interesting or funny with how easy it became to share anything and everything on YouTube. But just before that, the last big crucial piece of media that I engaged in before YouTube became the only thing that mattered was kingdomofloathing.com, which is a text-based, hand-drawn, online text-based RPG game. It had an integrated chat feature. It had turn-based everything. So basically you had 200 adventures that you could spend in a day to explore this little world and level up your character and then ascend and do it all over again. I met a user on Kingdom of Loathing by the name of Lackluster, who at the time was a 50 or 60-year-old woman. I typed in all chat, guys, I'm level 6. To do the next quest, I have to be level 7, but I don't have any more turns for today. I can't do anything because I've used all my turns. How can I get the experience to get to level 7? And she sends me a message, and she sends me 100,000 meat, which is the currency in that game, and goes, hey, you can just take any extra money you have and donate it to one of these statues, and it will bless you with extra experience if you want to get to your next level. Which was a ton of money, because that's like a nobody character. Just throwing somebody the equivalent of like a day's worth of work was like, holy shit, thank you so much. She invited me to her clan after discovering that I wasn't just scamming her out of free meat and was in fact actually a new player. And that was the first time I had spent any time chatting to somebody on the internet. I am eternally grateful that my early development, my social development, as it were, when it comes to interacting with other people online and learning about memes and cultures and trolling and what have you, took place in this game rather than the public forum of YouTube or MySpace or Facebook or anything to that knowledge, because there's no record of how much of a fucking noob I was back then. I specifically remember one time Lackluster and I were chatting and she said, "Hey, I have to AFK for a bit." And I was like, "Okay, talk to you tomorrow." And she messaged me back saying, "Hey, Sumito, AFK means away from keyboard. I'm just going to walk my dog. I'll be back in like 15 minutes. It doesn't mean I'm getting off for the day." And I was like, "Oh, okay." I didn't fucking know that. We had some drama in our clan and had to move to other clans, and a lot of things changed in the game, and the people that I talked to regularly in the game swapped in and swapped out. But me and Lackluster always stuck together in what we were doing because she taught me how to play the game. It very much became my mentality in the game to be this person who would help other people, share my resources, buff other players. I very much took a supportive role when it came to anything that was community driven because she took a supportive role, and that's how I wanted to play the game. We had this ongoing joke because the age difference between us was so apparent. She would always be like, if we ever met in real life, you'd think I was this old hag. And I was like, "Lack, relax." We had this inside joke where it was like, it's the internet, and on the internet, everybody is 22 and beautiful. And actually, to this day, I still have a custom name badge that you only get for paying $15 that she gifted me that says Sumito, 22 and beautiful. I wonder what she's up to nowadays. I log in once a year just to see if she's online, and she's not. But I wonder. Kingdom of Loathing was created and is filled with crude humor and adult humor and a lot of little inside jokes. Basically, every single enemy, area, and item has an in-joke to some piece of bigger media. And a lot of it is a time capsule of what was considered popular and mainstream and pop culture on the internet back then. I never considered myself an old enough gamer to be somebody who used to play, suds or like text-based dungeon crawling games, but Kingdom of Loathing was very much that with an integrated chat. So that is like the one piece of old internet that I was a part of. I wasn't so much a DeviantArt kid. I never really had a Tumblr. I didn't really get into the artistic parts of the internet that I look back on and I'm so jealous of all the people that are such great creatives on YouTube because they had this early development on this sprawling creative landscape that was Tumblr or DeviantArt or whatever. But I had Kingdom of Loathing, and that truly shaped the sort of humor that I appreciate and the in-jokes and all that to this day. After the era of Kingdom of Loathing was obviously when Dig became Reddit and when early YouTube became a thing. I'll touch on it briefly, but the reality is that my experience on YouTube isn't anything unique, and I don't even think it's anything that surprising. If I tell you that I was tremendously inspired to make YouTube videos after watching people like the music videos of Weird Al Yankovic and Kev Jumba and Ryan Higa and the early era of those sorts of YouTubers, I don't think any of you would be surprised. I don't think I need to do another video talking about how inspired I was watching people like Ray William Johnson just share all of these funny, unique pieces of media with his audience and getting to feel like a part of the community, a part of the internet in knowing all of these things and getting to share that with people in real life. It was very much my dream to be in a position where I could discover these sorts of things and then share it with my own community here on YouTube. And it's been thinking about that and sort of reflecting that that really is what the core of being a content creator is, that has had me very, retrospective, kind of emotional, thinking about, what your guiding light should be here on YouTube. And I think it's important to take a second in the position that I'm in and remember that the reason that you do this isn't so that your numbers go up or that you make more money from sponsors or that you have this hand where you can shape public opinion about things. At the end of the day, it is now what it always has been, which is to share things that you find funny, things that you find interesting with people on the internet that also think they're interesting, and hopefully you can call that a group of friends, whether that be your subscribers, your Patreon, or what have you. I'm very interested to hear about the early internet days from you guys. If you guys have any old school games or recollections of when you first became a memer, a shit poster, a hyena, or even just a viewer, please let me know down in the comments. I'm very excited to go down a bit of a nostalgia trip in what old internet was to the many thousands of you. Big shout out to the patrons scrolling in the back. Thank you so much for supporting the channel. Remember to subscribe if you want to catch my videos every day, and I'll catch you guys in tomorrow's one, yeah? Peace.